Welcome to The Explainer. You know, sometimes the best lessons in project management are, well, they're ancient. Today, we're going to dig into a colossal failure that's thousands of years old, the Tower of Babel.
I mean, the ambition here was just staggering, right? This was one of humanity's first great engineering projects. It was basically them shouting to the heavens, hey, nothing is impossible for us. You could call it a moonshot, but, Bronze Age style. And boy, did it fail. Spectacularly. But here's the thing that gets me. It wasn't because the goal was too crazy, and it wasn't because they ran out of stuff or didn't know how to build. So what was it? What really brought this whole thing crashing down?
Okay, so to get to the bottom of this, we're going to borrow a brilliant idea from a software engineering legend, Fred Brooks. We're going to look at the Tower of Babel not as some old myth, but as the world's first great engineering disaster. Let's call it a management. All right, let's dive in. If you were a project manager looking at the specs for this thing, you'd be thrilled. I mean, look at this. A clear mission? Yep, got that. Plentiful manpower? Absolutely. The right materials? They had clay and asphalt all over the place. No crazy deadlines, and they had the tech down. Masonry wasn't new to them. Seriously, on paper, this thing should have been a slam dunk.
And this right here, this is what brings it all into focus. For everything they had going for them, the whole project fell apart because of two things. Two totally human things: communication and organization. It's really that simple. If you can't talk to each other, you can't work together. Period.
So, you know the story, right? God comes down and makes them all speak different languages, creating a Babel. But here's the funny part. In our modern projects, we don't need any help from above. Oh no. We are masters at creating our own Babel.
You've heard this a million times, I'm sure. This one phrase, it's the hidden killer behind so many project disasters. It's why schedules slip. It's why that new feature doesn't talk to the old one. It's why you get those catastrophic system bugs. It's what happens when teams just quietly, slowly drift apart, each with their own idea of what they're building.
And this leads us to one of the most famous and kind of weird-sounding rules in management. If a project is late, adding more people to it will only make it later. It sounds crazy, right? But think about it. Every single person you add doesn't just add their own work. They add a whole new web of communication lines that have to be managed. The complexity doesn't just add, it multiplies, it explodes.
And look at this. This number just drives the point home. 45. That's how many potential lines of communication you have on a team of just 10 people. 10. That's a small team in most places, but you already have 45 different paths for miscommunication to happen. And every person you add from there just makes that number skyrocket. Can you even imagine a team of 100? The chaos is practically built in.
Okay, so that sounds pretty bleak, right? How in the world do you solve a communication nightmare like that? Well, this is where Fred Brooks comes in with a really powerful, elegant tool to bring some order to that chaos. He calls it the Project Workbook.
Now, don't think of this as just some folder where you dump all your documents. No. This is a single, organized source of truth. Brooks has this great line where he says technical writing is almost immortal. You know what he means. A sentence from a memo you wrote on day one could somehow end up in the final user manual years later. The workbook is what makes sure that immortal writing is actually correct, easy to find, and that everyone is seeing the same version.
The real trick here is to think of the workbook as a living, breathing system, not some dusty old archive. You have to design the structure right from the get-go. You have to consciously control who gets what information, and you have to keep it updated constantly. When you do that, you create that one central place everyone can trust. That's how you cut through the babble.
But listen, even the world's greatest workbook can't save you if your team structure is a mess. And that brings us right back to that second major failure point, organization. Turns out, the way you actually structure your team can be what Brooks calls a radical attack on the whole communication problem.
So Brooks's big idea is to create a really clear separation between two key roles. First, you've got the producer. Think of them as the doer. They're the manager, the one who builds the team, sets the schedule, and deals with everyone outside the core team. Then you have the architect. This is your thinker. Their job is to create the design, make sure it all holds together, and manage all the communication inside the team.
So you might be thinking, why not just find one amazing person to do both? Well, here's the problem. On any project that's even a little bit complex, each of those roles is a full-time job. And maybe even more important, the person who's a brilliant thinker is usually not the same person who's a brilliant doer.
They're just different skill sets, and finding someone who is genuinely amazing at both, they're like unicorns. So when you try to force one person to be a thinker-doer, you're usually just setting them up to fail.
You know, the science fiction writer Robert Heinlein absolutely nailed this exact problem in one of his books. He's got this chief engineer, the architect, basically, who is trying to design a spaceship to go to the moon. But he's at his breaking point because he's completely buried in administrative nonsense that has nothing to do with, designing a spaceship.
And the solution in the story is just perfect. The boss hires a producer, a guy he calls, and I love this, the Lord High Everything Else. And this guy's only job is to handle all the non-engineering stuff. All of it. And just like that, the architect is free to do the one thing that only he can do, actually design the damn moonship.
And that really brings us back to the whole point, doesn't it? The reason the Tower of Babel failed. It wasn't a technical problem. It was a people problem. It was a human problem. And the lesson from that, the one that's still so true today, is that communication and organization, they aren't just soft skills. They are critical engineering systems in their own right. And they need just as much careful design and attention as any piece of code or concrete. So I want you to think about your own work, your own projects, your own teams. That thing you're building right now, is it a modern tower? And if so, are your blueprints for communication and organization actually clear? Or, and be honest, are you accidentally creating your very own Babel, just waiting for everything to grind to a halt?